Good evening, everyone. If you haven't signed in, please do so. You can grab an agenda. There's a couple extra other handouts as well. And your snacks for Sam Maria. Maria's not here tonight. She's out of town visiting family, so I'm filling in for her. So my name is Jennifer McDonald. I am the operations officer for the gateway system for the city of Albuquerque. So I'll be leading this meeting. Let's do introductions and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, I'm Donna, Parkland Hills resident, long time.
I'm Wally, ditto, Central Parkland Hills resident.
Long time.
I'm with her.
I'm Janet Simon, I'm from Parkland Hills.
Me too.
That's fine, I don't see these persons.
Long time.
Oh, do we have a majority? Did we vote?
I'm Michael Voss. I'm with the City of Albuquerque Planning Department, Principal Planner. So I'm the team lead for regulatory planning and the city zoning enforcement officer.
I'm Judith Gray, I'm also a principal planner with the planning department, but today I will probably be listening more. Use your extra.
Pete Toledo, Southeast Heights.
On your own, thoughts on paper.
Sandra Correa, Elder Homestead.
Steve Sacco, Elder Homestead.
Natalie Vargas, South San Pedro.
Mike Kuchelski, I'm up in the Mark Twain neighborhood north of Saragos, but I'm really interested in the work that this is supposed to be focused on.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. Maria, I know always has scripted a meeting first. I won't read that for you. It's on your agenda. Just know that we are here to talk about hard problems. So as Maria always says, be hard on problems and soft on people. But we're going to dive right in because our planning department is here and we're here. So let's dive all into information they're bringing us tonight.
So I don't have a formal presentation for y'all, but I heard there was a desire to hear more about the integrated development ordinance, which is the City of Albuquerque's zoning code. It's the document that we use to regulate what can happen on property and where it can happen. The processes that property owners need to go through to get approvals for those things to happen. So I've got up on the screen a website, abq-zone.com. That is the website for our integrated development ordinance, including the current version that's in effect. We post updates on our our annual update process that just went to a biennial every other year update process. So you can find some past versions there. So I did not have to submit an application like this week for an annual update. I gotta wait another year. So
Little breathing room, yes.
on this document, you can click on the read the IDO version in effect, and there's the handy interactive version. It has a table of contents, has features such as being able to hover over certain words and see what the definitions are. If you want to download a copy for yourself, I would go to cabq.gov/planning. And on this left-hand column, the codes and regulations link, and then the integrated development ordinance is there. So you can find the document that's currently effective as of this past August 3rd, as well as the whole history of the IDO and each version, going back to the first version effective in 2018. In case you're a giant nerd like I am and sometimes want to look at that. Along with the IDO document, you need a zoning map that tells you what each property is zoned. So here are links to the zoning maps. This interactive map has a tiny url.com/IDO zoning map. The easy way to get to this interactive map viewer. The IDO is broken up into sections. First section is sort of general provisions, some legal language. Each zone district is created and described in section 2. Section 3 has some overlay zones, which are small areas of the city that have some of their own special regulations. So there are special rules close to the airports, historic districts. The west side has 2 view protection overlays to protect views to and from the Sandias, the Bosque, and the petroglyphs. And then there are character protection overlay zones for, say, neighborhoods that we have a certain character that might not be strictly historic, that we want to maintain. An example kind of near to here is Nob Hill, has a character protection overlay zone. The fourth part outlines a table of uses. It's everything you can do on a particular property. Pretty much all of these uses have a definition in the back if you're not sure what one of them is, but each zone district is across the top. So you figure out what zoning district you are and just zoom in our gateway property that we're at right now. You can see that the gateway site is zoned MXH, which is a mixed use high intensity zone district. So in the IDO, if you go to the MXH zone column, you can scroll down and find that an overnight shelter, for instance, is a conditional use. And the city went through the conditional use process for the gateway a few years ago. In addition to whether or not the use is permissive primary, which is a by right approval, or the conditional use, which requires a hearing process, each use on the right-hand side, there's a link, which is handy that these are hyperlinks that you can click on. There are use-specific standards. So for overnight shelter, there are some standards that might be more restrictive or impose sort of additional specific design standards on that use. So overnight shelters are prohibited within 1,500 feet in any direction of another lot containing another overnight shelter. So it's to create a separation between them. They need to be done indoors, and then there's a size limit in the MXM zone district.
That would apply to this facility as well.
So this shelter, this gateway, the shelter component of the gateway, at least gateway has a bunch of different uses in it, hospital, different medical offices. The overnight shelter component, because it's on this property, there is now a prohibition that within 1,500 feet of this property, no additional shelter could come in because of this use standard. So each use or most of the uses have some of those use standards. We like to sometimes say that the table giveth, it might say you can do something, but then the use specific standard might take it away what you can do. The fifth section of the IDO are development standards. They're the general rules of how tall something can be, how close or far from your property line it needs to be, how much landscaping you have to provide on the property. This past year, we just completely rewrote the outdoor and site lighting section of the code to encourage and require sort of more night sky, dark sky compliant development. neighborhood edges, which provides for building height step downs close to single family or low density neighborhoods and things of that nature. This section also includes operation and maintenance standards that our code enforcement division uses to cite property owners if they're doing things that aren't allowed. It's sort of one part of our enforcement mechanism. I will admit here that I lease a spot, but a letter just got sent in the mail to my property for weeds. So I need to clean up in an alleyway behind my property, so where I'm living. So this section is one of those that the city can utilize to ensure sort of maintenance and operation of each individual property.
Do those complaints have to be called in, or does the city drive around and, I mean, how would they see them in your alley?
So code enforcement is mostly a complaint-based process. We don't have
Right,
Yeah.
right. Complaints.
so it's usually a neighbor that complains. I suspect that I think our code enforcement inspectors, when they do receive a complaint in a certain area, they will also do targeted, proactive kind of nearby. I just suspect that's why I think they cited every person on my block who's on that alley. And because I have access to the system with my job, there was one house on the corner that got cited first that has a weed problem in the front yard. And then I think it was kind of the rest of us.
Sure.
I think the code enforcement inspector kind of did a little bit of a survey of the surrounding area.
No, because then if you don't address it,
Like when we moved in here, they would come around twice a year and send
Yeah.
letters regardless.
So I'm not sure of the current process like that, but I do think with current staffing, my understanding is that it's mostly complaint driven. So definitely calling things to 311 to get inspectors to show up and look at things.
Yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I observed from my house, which is about a half mile from here, Catherine and San Mateo, a drone that was flying, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 500 feet or less. And it was flying the grid over Parkland Hills. Is that something that you know anything about, city planning or we looking for weeds or?
I do not think we're utilizing drones for code enforcement. We do have a drone operator in planning, primarily for roof inspections. So
The city has
the city has a drone operator.
a roof
And
inspection.
it's in the building safety division with planning to assist in re-roofing roof inspections on properties.
Because all the roofers seem to have drones now too, so they don't have to go up there and look.
Utilities starts from.
Yeah, I'm not aware that we're using drones for.
Well,
code
if,
enforcement.
if one person starts to use a drone, they're all gonna want it for a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
Oh, you built a little casino in the back, we need to send you another tax bill.
So how do you know if it's a legal drone or not? I mean, is there any way of?
It was flying a pattern that was not, it was not a rookie operating it, and the pattern was.
But that doesn't make it legal.
Well, there's specific rules, you have to have a license.
You have to have a
There's rules that
commercial
happen,
pilot
you can
license.
buy to the airport.
Because you're close to the
base.
airport.
Yes, which is why I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't know how you find out if it's legal or not.
Shoot it down and see who comes to your door.
I thought about that. I bet they'd be here in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I can only comment because we identified that one of the fiber optics companies that is working in the sector, actually identified, came to our house literally and asked to go in the backyard and then said, we are going to have drones that are going to be doing some patterns. Now that was a good 2 months ago. So I don't know if this is a part of that.
Oh, that's
Seems like she get noticed.
No, it's some other, it's a fiber optics entity that has their office locations off of Zuni, just west of Louisiana.
But they're gonna be putting fiber optics in our whole neighborhood.
Correct.
My understanding.
Yes.
Not necessarily above ground. Some of it's going underground. Okay, sorry.
I am not the fiber optics,
Melinda, did you have a?
Oh, I didn't know, it's not your department, but since code enforcement came, since your thing and you went through some digging, what's the staffing at code enforcement at this point too? Because it seems there's a lot way backlog of stuff and we were last told it was because of how understaffed they were, so I don't know if they're.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that
Okay,
question. I mean, we've been hiring, so I think
Okay.
we're better, but I don't know like what percentage or anything like that.
okay. And for just based off what you were just reviewing in the IDO, with the conditional use permit, if we can have a discussion at the end. Janet actually sent to me some data from EPD Southeast, a recent report as far as increase in both violent crime and property crime in our public safety corridor. One of the terms and the reasons the city got their special use permit for the overnight shelter was to help be, keeping all of this down, which isn't happening. It's going up. And so I would like to put an item for discussion, be it at the end of this meeting or the next, where we discuss how we have accountability for what's not being done as part of this permitting process. Yeah.
Just quickly then, just go pivot back to the IDO quick. So there's all sorts of performance standards for development, how much parking, the height of front yard walls has been a hot topic. If you follow our annual update process the last couple of years, it is still only 3 feet tall unless you get a special permit. Yeah,
So if we get a special permit for that, would we have seen one of the little notice signs going up?
you would not see a note. Well, the special permit, yes, you would have seen a yellow
A
notice.
request for a variance.
And so if we
Or a
did
tall-
not,
By major wall permit or a variance, depending on the situation. And so did not, and they built it without that, maybe call
On
code
a corner
enforcement.
lot that doesn't give enough space to see around the corner outside Pedro, yeah.
and can we clarify with some of these, because this is being part of the neighborhood associations, we should be getting notices of that.
An email notice as well.
Yeah,
You're-
yeah,
it's
true too, yeah,
for any variance.
Mhm.
yeah.
And so, talking about processes, part 6 of the IDO are the procedures section. So again, there's another table, talks about the types of decisions and then public notice that's required for those. So there's administrative decisions that require a hearing, and then there are policy decisions, which are the ones that utilize our comprehensive plan. It's like one of the primary decision criteria.
Do you want to scroll back up to where it says wall or fence
So
specifically?
yeah, so a permit wall or fence major is the permit to go above 3 feet in a front or street side yard. There are certain criteria, it has specific criteria that either if you don't meet those, well, one of them is 20% of your neighbors also have a taller wall. If you don't meet that, some people ask for the variance through the ZHE. Both of those go through the zoning hearing examiner, which is the ZHE here. And so all of them, both of them, I guess wall or fence major doesn't have published. And honestly, I think we actually do publish it.
What we're finding is, I build my wall
Mm-hmm.
and then I ask for variance.
Mm-hmm.
And the inspector may or may not come. And then there's a hearing. And then I say, I just spent $25,000.
Yeah, right.
You wouldn't be mean to me, would you? And invariably, the answer is no. And despite the entire block being against it, submitting letters, it's a very controversial. And I spend one day a week on the IDO. Have you heard of the Inter Coalition Council? Yeah, okay. That, we talk about this nearly the entire meeting. And we are fit to be tied. Because the written word is to be followed. And in this meeting and other meetings, we say, we've asked for compliance officers. And usually they don't come. Sometimes, I think Cedra was one, I've written or called 49 times, no reply. And it's worrying at the community, really just, what protections? I mean, theoretically, we are protected, but we find developers are protected more than we are. And the developers have an inordinate amount of influence before and after and during the meeting. You know, it's observed because people in the meeting, they watch it. And it's so frustrating. And I don't know, I'm not here to kill the messengers at all, but a lot of folks are close to giving up and say, what else can we do? But elect new officials, maybe, but that takes a while. And so please note that there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of real solid information that this system isn't working. It's just not working.
Yeah, and I can't necessarily speak for the decisions that get made by the ZHE.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I do understand the frustration of seeing things, especially like fences and stuff getting built, because I mean, it's hard, I think we think kind of long and hard, like how do we make sure people come to us to get their permits for something that, they see as so simple, or they hire someone who says that, we're gonna make you a great fence, we're gonna follow all the rules.
In uphill, there was a 7-foot fence. And then the downhill association absolutely was against it. So they came back with a 7-foot plexiglass fence. But it's still a fence. It's stuff like that that just, it detracts from the ambiance of neighborhoods.
Yep.
And it's stuff like that, and everybody here has a job and would rather be home, but they're here because they care about what's happening in our community. And we'd like a win, I guess, bottom line, we'd like a win once in a while. For sure.
Yeah.
So additionally to, people, building costing $25,000 hypothetically. We also have the people who are just slapping up boards and razor wire and slowly going up, and just whatever things they can find to make the back of the. So equally speaking, we would call to report that, and technically speaking, you all would have to go out there and not confront, that's wrong, but address the issue with the, because we're seeing like a lot of, I'm not gonna say out of state landlords, but a lot of our properties are becoming rental properties. And the people who rent the house just now decide to do things. And the person who actually owns the property doesn't care, as long as they get their money every month. So,
Reported zoning will still come after the property owner as a rental property owner. They'll send the owner letters, nasty letters.
so equally, because we've been involved with cleaning up the alleyways and murals and all that. We're seeing some houses that it's that's illegal. I want to put razor wire on my wall
Yeah.
too, but it's illegal, you know, and so I just think of, to Pete's, we're all just getting fed up about what we can do, you know, and so with what Melinda said, you know, the staffing issues that we've been told in the past, and so we, the people, like some kind of, say transparency, but
Yeah,
to know that we're actually being listened to, because these are issues that are affecting our daily.
And complaint driven reports are detrimental to the health of the neighborhood. Because I get in your face and I say, what then, you know? Nasty word after nasty word, and how dare you do that? And don't you know, if I happen to be 6'4" and somebody else is 5'2", and there's an communication, and I get a lot of reports of that, you know, we are afraid to report it anymore or at all. What can the city do? Send me here, gosh, don't you know we don't have enough inspectors? Again, you know, the community sure like a win here.
mention of razor wire, so I just pulled up our razor wire.
So we should put that on River One then, if we find it.
So if you see razor wire in a residential area, report it. It's prohibited. Even on a mixed use property that's right next to residential, unless it's a utility facility, critical infrastructure, which is basically PNM substation, they shouldn't have it. There are in the non-residential zones, so some commercial, more industrial areas where it's allowed in certain circumstances. I will say that there is so within all the decision-making things, section 6.4 is sort of what are the different types of public notice, how do you do it? And then we break down each decision type by the criteria that the decision maker is supposed to use. And then this section 6.8 is non-conformities. So if something got built that predates a rule that now says you can't do it, this section is what governs that. In general, you are allowed, like, down the block from me, I live in an R1 neighborhood. The corner house is actually a fourplex. It's zoned R1, but it got built in the 1950s, predates zoning, so they can keep using that as a fourplex unless it becomes vacant for long enough, and then they need to come into compliance over time. That's sort of the general process, and there is a specific subsection about razor wire, barbed wire. That's in here.
And you know, Michael, that's crime driven,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
how can I protect my house?
Yeah.
How can I protect my kids?
Yeah.
Well, I'll put a razor wire and that, I don't know. I guess it could, but you know, certain encampment issues that continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and, you know, there's a reason for everything.
Yeah.
And so there is actually, so, you know, if it's in residential, they actually have no recourse, basically, on the razor wire prohibition. You call it in, code enforcement gives them a time frame for compliance, and then they're supposed to remove it. If it is more of a commercial mixed use property, there's actually a deadline 4 years from now. It was like this past year, but then city council sponsored an amendment to push it out because of commercial property owners along Central who wanted to keep their razor wire.
Yeah.
So that's the elected officials will you know, determine some of this and when they adopt rules. And so
Well, it's,
For commercial properties, they get longer to hold on to their barbed wire.
some of that has to do with who's trespassing on your property too, right? And there probably may not have been as much of that going on as when this was.
Originally written.
Probably not.
Yeah. And then, like I said at the beginning, definitions are always useful. So all of section 7 is a long list of definitions. In case any word is confusing or you're not sure what it might mean, I'm always in the definition section for part of my job. So that's it at a high level. And just to go back to the map quick, this map is sort of helpful because it has buttons across the bottom. And once you get to button 3, these coincide with each section of the IDO. So the layers on the button 3 are the overlay zones, which is section 3 or part 3 of the IDO, which has those different overlay zones. Turn on those layers, zoom out, so you can see these different layers are the airport protection overlay zone. Then you have the non-hill CPO, and the blue ones are historic. And then button 4 are those use standards. So in certain parts of town, there are certain prohibitions or restrictions on specific types of uses. And then the development standards, again, section 5 is button 5. We have rules about properties that are close to landfills. So we have all of our former landfills mapped, for instance. And then button 6 are special procedural things. Historic areas require historic approval from the Landmarks Commission. The properties near the railroad, depending if you're doing industrial uses close to residential, there's a cumulative impacts requirement. So you might have to go to the Planning Commission, if you're doing a more intense use, to have them analyze the impacts of that use on the surrounding area. There are a variety of others.
Michael, the variance that appeared on that drop down, there's 2 variances. Could you explain those? Are those identifying entities that have gone through the variance process or?
No, so the variance EPC coincides with the 2 view protection overlays on the west side.
Okay.
So if you want a variance to a view standard, we say that variance has to go to the Planning Commission and not the ZHE. That was a decision that got made when the IDO got drafted. And I think it kind of coincides with what the old Coors corridor plan and the Northwest Mesa escarpment plan, which predate the IDO, and sort of were the baseline for the view regs, required you to go to. So basically it's just, these are the 2 areas where if you want a variance to those standards, it's a different decision maker than normal variances. And then I think this one is just, it's the 2 airport overlay zones. So if you want a variance, there's something about if you need a variance with certain things in the APO. So it's a relationship between like those overlays.
So is there any
Process.
identifying way with this interactive map to identify entities who have gone through a variance process for their properties?
Not on this map, we don't. So if we go to the IDO website, again, the planning website, codes and regulations, IDO, the advanced map viewer, mapping option is another map viewer. It's a little bit more complicated. But let's just turn on. So if you open up this planning layers, you have a planning research layer. So all of these black outlines are applications that have been submitted to the city since 2018.
So they still like pending then, or like they're just the more recent
They
ones?
could be done. So if you want to go from the year 2000 to 2018, that's this case tracking. These blue boxes. And this case history is before 2000. And you can obviously like use these as a basis to, ask someone at planning, do an IPRA, whatever you want. This is one way you can see. It sometimes takes a little while to get this layer up to date, so you might catch it. This layer might not be things that are like literally happening today, but you can look backwards and say, did they get something for it?
What is Posse case track, the POS?
Posse is the current software that we use to put applications in, give them a project number and invoice a customer.
And this EPC, does that stand for Environmental Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask another question? How does the ABC comprehensive plan play into IDO? Because with an IDO, you're supposed to be kind of underneath, like operating in accordance to and within the ideals of ABC comprehensive planning?
Yes. So under state law, zoom way out here, 30,000 foot view. Under state law, every municipality is supposed to have like a comprehensive master plan. You need that so you can get state funding. Talks about a bunch of different things. Land use is one of them. Transportation, public facilities. Ours is the ABC comprehensive plan, and it's full of policies and a vision for where we want Albuquerque to go. The IDO, so we updated the comprehensive plan in 2016, and then it was followed by adoption of the IDO. The revision of the old zoning code into the IDO was intended as a mechanism of implementing that comprehensive plan. So the zoning code is the technical tool that we use to implement that vision. So things that follow the rules in the IDO, and we give them administrative approvals, that's because we believe or hope that the rules are implementing that comprehensive plan. If it requires a public hearing, depending on the type of public hearing, it's like we mostly look at the rules, but there's a little bit more input. Conditional uses, one of the criteria talks about the comprehensive plan.
Right.
And then it's the policy decisions. So it's when someone actually wants to change the zoning designation of a property. When we go through the update process to the IDO and actually change the rules, those processes are policy decisions that, again, the real decision criteria that EPC or the city council are supposed to use is, are these changes to zoning and the rules furthering that vision and the policies of the comprehensive plan? So that's kind of how they relate together. Does that make sense?
No, it does. I think my concern is I don't think there's as many people that spend time really revisiting the vision for that comprehensive plan. It should be, because I think the city would look and feel very different if they did. So I don't know, that's where, and I know it's supposed to be superseding, it's supposed to be the vision by which all these other things come into play, but when you look at the health of our neighborhoods right now, I don't feel that people are adhering to what's outlined in the ABC.
So one of the other things that the planning department does is our community planning area reports, and there's 12 of them. All of the 12 areas around Albuquerque, our long range planners. Right now, we're doing two of them on the west side. We create these reports for each small area, get actions kind of that come out of all of them for areas of improvement. And then after that cycle is done, we go back and we revisit the comp plan. So it's probably not for 5 years.
Well,
5 years from now,
the next update,
yeah.
although when the Near Heights CPA has been incorporated into the comp plan.
Right. Then who's kind of overseeing it for our area?
We've been short-staffed, and so Rebecca Bolin, who's another one of our principal planners, and it's actually the whole, like, oversees like all of the long-range planners, I
Okay,
think is still kind of acting as the Near Heights
okay,
person, but
Okay.
we might be working on onboarding someone.
okay.
So maybe be on the lookout for having an area planner.
Was it in any of those planning, because when we were doing research, on this area prior to Gateway, we discovered this pockets of poverty analysis that was done that completely left out the whole ID, which I don't understand at all. I'm still wondering. So I'm wondering, like, where, like, was that have been part of one of these, like, do you know where that originated from?
I
For
can
the
tell a
history
little
of
bit
it?
about it,
Okay,
a little bit,
okay,
but, it stands for Housing Neighborhood Economic Development Fund.
right,
It is a federal fund. I think it's HUD, Housing and Urban Development. And it actually started about 20 years ago, I
right,
believe, more than that. And so 20 years ago, whatever analysis was done that identified those pockets of poverty, and they are generally contiguous that border I-25, right, south of Central generally, so it's a
Yeah.
funny shaped area
yeah,
that was identified, and I don't know what the criteria were for identifying that. I know that there's been a bunch of history about the money being spent and when is it replenished, but they did just recently with a community group, advisory group, update the priorities for how that money would be spent the next round. It's some
Okay.
millions, it's not 100 million, but it's not one.
right,
It's 12, there's some, usually that's the kind of money that you need to leverage with another investment. I've just been looking at it because I've been looking at the community engagement and what people said were the priorities for investments, specifically around displacement.
yeah,
And so we're using those and the international district area and there's choice neighborhood, there are several different programs. I'm working with Central Albuquerque. But those are areas where there's been a lot more need identified for investments that really bring up
yeah,
and preserve the communities that
Right.
exist.
right,
But what we're working on, even though those policies were written for that area, the pockets of poverty, what I'm working on now will be citywide based on where is it needed now, not, some areas don't really need it, but we're not limiting ourselves in this displacement tool, anti-displacement tool to that.
okay,
So if you've seen that, and if you think that that it's reflecting outcomes that you think are important, then that's good in this way. I mean, I can't make that fund eligible here, but I can say that we look at that input and looking at different areas. The issues and concerns are the same.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
we don't need
or
to.
exacerbated, like, and the thing is, like, all of us know 20 years ago, that was like, the ID was still impoverished 25 years ago, 30, basically since they decided to, plow I-40 through, not since,
Yeah.
maybe early 70s has that neighborhood not been impacted by.
I
So,
don't know what criteria were used to make that determination of identified pockets of poverty, but
right,
But we can look at needs anyway now. We can be informed by the need for more housing, housing for multiple, a whole range of income levels for age, changes in aging. And that's not just like isolated to those areas.
Thank you for addressing, yeah, because that's just been a mystery, like, when I found out that it existed, I was like, what happened here? Like, who were these people that came in and just decided to evaluate that, and they came up with like Barilla, South Valley, a couple places downtown, and then anything over here just didn't kind of qualify in that, and it didn't make sense to me, so.
Now I'm curious too.
Yeah.
I used to take so much information in, but now I have to go back and say, what were the criteria?
Right. Because when I read it, yeah.
Well, it was the least thing, and it also may have been something where the funding source already limited it. I don't know. Those things often come up, but now I'm curious about it too.
Yeah,
I appreciate why that would be confusing and frustrating.
yeah. Thank you.
So you were asking about like how you can find things, like whether they got permits or went through our processes. So I would say the planning research layer can be useful for that. Also on this map viewer though, you can open up this sites button and you can actually find all the properties. And I don't know how far this goes back, but we have a building permits layer. So you can figure out permits that have been issued on. So this property got a building permit issued at the start of 2022 for something. Residential alterations for $40,000. Looks like some kind of addition or a shed or. So you can look up building permits through this map viewer. And you can also, if you want to be technical enough, this one that's Hydrotrans are all of the city's grading and drainage plans and transportation plans for properties. O'Neill's, you can look up their approved building permit, like grading approval and different things like that. So there's a lot of information that we make publicly available through our server. And then say, it's shut me down, apparently.
That's 20 seconds. There we go.
Can we do that at the office too?
Gotta use the touchscreen to be active. So the question was asked about what is the POSSE, P-O-S-S-E? The best way I know how to get, because you can search in that system as well for certain things. And the easiest way I know how to get there is actually through business registration. Conduct a business registration and information search, and then click this button. It actually gets you access to searching all of our building permits
By address.
by the address. You can also search for code enforcement complaints. The code enforcement complaints search is very slow. I'm not hard to use in my experience, but it's out there. But you can, look for a building permit, under, let's see here, 7200. That's the address. This is the Somos residential development next to Tallinn Market.
Oh.
So you can see that they submitted a building permit on August 20th. Construction of a 4-story mixed-use project, 70 dwelling units, blah, blah, blah.
Last week.
And how do we get to this page again, or the search we went to?
Business registration, we're just gonna go backwards here. So planning department website,
Okay.
business registration information,
Okay,
and then you wanna conduct a search. A couple clicks through on the search brings you to our search functionality. We are working on a project to replace this Posse software with a new software that I think is more intuitive and user friendly. And we're anticipating, fingers crossed, well, we were supposed to go live a month ago. But delays and everything. I think January 27 is the newest date. I was just in a meeting about this, so.
so you'll probably be in another meeting here sometime in the next 2 years before it goes up. When it's really going live, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But on that software, if you, and I don't know, all of like this software, like what happens if you create an account and what you have access to. Hopefully, if you like, you can create an account, you can, and you'll be able to actually search for more easily and find like ZHE cases.
okay,
And then be able to even review some of the documents that got submitted right in like your web browser or download PDFs.
okay.
Is our hope.
Cause you couldn't do that now, like, wouldn't you be able to do that now?
No,
Because,
this search doesn't get you like ZHE or EPC, like our planning cases. So that's really whenever we post agendas or you get a notice in the mail, you have to like call us and
yeah,
ask for the information today. So we're opening that up even more, hopefully in the next like 6 months.
Michael, the portable fencing around the Allen Market, that requires approval.
If it's up for an actual construction project, no. But I know it's been there a while.
So it's up to stop the homeless folks from camping in and around their building.
Mhm.
You know, I went in and asked. And then, as you go east on Zuni and Central, there's fence upon fence
Oh, God, yeah.
upon fence. Mostly chain link, at least 6 foot, sometimes 8 foot high. Does that require approval?
A permanent chain link fence does need a permit of some kind. Some of those permits, depending on the zoning of the property and how tall it is, could be administrative and issued over the counter by our zoning staff. Others maybe would require to go to the ZHE. Kind of depends on the situation of the individual property. The temporary like construction fencing is more of a gray area, you know, and really it should be tied to an actual construction project. But
Fencing with that wrought iron, though, it's exceptionally expensive, like onerous for a business entity. Like I'm working with a small group downtown. Not even near the size of that property, and it's $75,000.
Oh, no, it's very, yeah, it's very,
It's not a joke.
Mrs. Buffett, I think she spent 88,000 on her fence. Oh, it's a nice fence. Did she need it? She didn't need it. Well, no, wait a minute. Did she want it? No. Did she need it? Yes.
Yes.
Because the homeless folks, they were just all over the place. And then the alley to the north of her property, D6 took an action and were able to get that fenced off. But is fencing the answer to homelessness? You know, at this point in time, it just seems to continue. And then the folks go out the street. I mean, today, they were just on the sidewalk, a leg in the street. And, you know, it's heartbreaking.
I think, an issue also that relates to this fencing thing where people are trying to keep them away from their property and buildings. We are entering colder season, fires are starting to get like now, and so I think what kind of preventative action can the city take? Because we have neighbors that, their homes are at risk these people are burning fires up against their backyard walls.
So you can report it. One of the things that Albuquerque Fire is getting ready to launch their truck. They have a truck patrol that goes around and looks for outside fires during the winter. Okay, so what they'll do is they'll show up, they'll make sure the fires are put out. And then they'll also hand out coats and blankets and they'll first offer them an option to take a ride to a shelter. Or if they decline it, they'll give them more clothing. So that'll be their job, that fire truck's job, all into it.
And
So if you do see one call, call it in.
so that would be a call to 242 or 911 to get AFR out there. It's a,
If it's close to property and it's a dangerous situation, it's
and is there only one truck for the whole Albuquerque or is it one?
Yeah,
per
for the whole,
district?
it's for the whole city, but you know, if it is a dangerous situation, go ahead, call 911, I'll send that district's fire truck.
So this is them just driving around and if they see something or they have, it's call generally.
It's both.
It's a wildfire range truck, a 4-way unit, because, you know, you just don't need to spend all that money. I'm glad they do it. I think you probably need 3 or 4 of them.
Anything more to present, but I'm happy to stick around for a while and answer more questions or whatever. And I know the agenda is, there's other stuff that you talk about, but.
So I have a question about how you merge the dark sky concept with the increase in street lighting that the city seems to want.
It's a good question. The IDO regulates private property and not the street lights in the right of way. We have what's called the development process manual, which has street lighting requirements. So there is probably a little bit of a conflict there. I know the street lights, one of the things that we added in the IDO this year regarding lighting was color temperature. So how bright white versus yellow your lights are. We put a cap at 3,200 Kelvin, which is pretty low, middle of the road. Our street lighting can go up to 4,000, so it's more white and brighter. We could push to change what's in the DPM. There's a process to go through for that. So there is a little bit of there is a bit of a sort of conflict there.
A gray area.
Yeah, and you know, what's in the right of way is not regulated by the IDO, and the city does want some more street lighting. We can, you know,
I think the
push
city
them to be
might.
better and to install shields on the lights too as well.
They're actually doing it now. They're putting in a new type of light, instead of going out, it goes down. And TNPM is also aware of that, and it's really a big problem.
And I do know there was a neighborhood, it was in the northwest part of the city that got some new lights installed with a roadway project. They were obviously much brighter than what was there before. And I think if you make a request through like DMD, the Municipal Development Department, and they can potentially like add, there's probably a little bit of an added cost, but they can sort of, in addition to just the fixtures themselves, but they can put like a shield to make sure that the light stays in the road and not backlighting toward the private property.
Thank you for that answer. Another question, I don't know whether you're involved, but I saw in the news in this past week that the city was asking for $40 million more for this facility. For additional beds in a wing somewhere.
The residential program?
No, it's part of this.
Yeah, but yeah,
But
Building,
it's for housing,
It's for housing. not
yes,
shelters.
in this building.
housing
this
in this
facility.
building.
yeah.
For a lot.
Is it transitional housing? What kind of housing? Or is it supportive?
We're not, yeah, we're not that far into it, so, but if we,
Jennifer, the pain and the posterior regarding the residential programs have merit. You know, I mean, that's not an issue, but I heard about it when I turned on channel 13. And then, boy, did I get some calls. What do you know about this? Next to nothing. And you know, it's a cart before the horse again. It's supposed to.
Well, yeah, you don't
here.
know if it's being, like, just so we don't know if it's being transitional or not, but yet there's a budget of money, like, ask for money before we know what it is. I mean, I guess that keeps happening with this whole facility is like with money, but then, and this is supposed to be the place where those things get discussed. And I mean, I haven't been here the last couple meetings, so, but I mean, I know people were asking me about it because like people that do attend these meetings had asked about it and you know, so that's.
so the potential to turn A-wing, which is, we don't have very many uses for it right now. There's not very many tenants in there. Kitchen is in there. That serves our hospitals and our shelter beds. There is a plan to look at, can we get a developer who would be willing to invest in setting up housing? Low cost, it could be the long-term supportive housing or transition housing, it would help us transition people out of shelters into longer term housing. So we're not very far in the development. We're looking for a developer to take on that cost for us. But it would be turning A-wing, which is this original wing, it's the original Loveless hospital wing, into a we don't know, we're still, we're working with an architect to see how many we get, but could potentially be 2 bedrooms for apartments. If we want families to.
2 bedrooms per.
Maybe some studio apartments, so it might be a mix of both. So we can start families.
Sort of it's a related question that came up, after sort of hearing this news and then looking at, you know, the information that's being shared with all of us pertaining to the operational plan that is now from 2021. Is there some thought of updating that and potentially, I bring this up because a lot of what's in that operational plan now has not necessarily come forward in time and has drastically seemed to obviously evolve into other things.
So that's a fair ask, I can look into that.
Okay, good.
I can definitely look into that. Any more questions? We can transition out of the meeting into the next meeting point. Are there any more questions for Michael? Because I don't want to keep.
Michael, do you have a card?
Wait, I'll do it.
Just see if anyone else wants to grab one, just pass that file down until they run out.
That's quite all right.
Yeah, they are.
Yes, they were.
Okay, let's transition into Gateway Center updates. We are almost to November. So a couple of external things that you're gonna see going on. Signage to update the name from Gibson Health Club to Gateway Center should go up mid to end of November. That includes the blue awning on the west entrance. It's gonna be a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, come down a little bit further, as you can imagine, for security officers that have to sit on that. Guard office during the summer months take a beating in that sun, so you will see the awning get a little bit bigger. But all the signage, including the bigger sign outside, will change the name to Gateway Center. Logo's not changing, it will still be the Zia logo. But you'll see some trucks out, cherry pickers up on the wall getting those signs changed. Our next construction project, just got turned over to us today. We received our certificate of occupancy for our medical sobering center. So we can talk, I don't know if Maria's talked to you guys about next month's meeting. I don't assume y'all wanna come in and meet with us on Thanksgiving Day, so we'll get that rescheduled, but there's a chance that we'll be able to take you on a tour of that site next month before we open for clients. So Sobering Center, we are working with an operator right now to put it under contract. They will operate it for us. Just like the women's facility is being operated for us and the first responders site is being operated for us by a contractor. We're in negotiations now, getting those negotiations final. We will have an open house next month as well. We have 50 beds, what we're calling 50 beds, so a combination of single twin beds out in an open hungry area. Some recliner, and then I think there's 6 small private rooms for someone who needs to come in and needs quiet or needs lights like this brought down low. We have private rooms for them. There's 2 nurses stationed that have line of sight across to each other and then down the corridor, so the employees have line of sight with each other at all times. And some education monitoring and some case management. We'll be working with our first responder teams to do trainings on who is appropriate to bring to the site versus who's appropriate to take to an emergency room. So our Alpha Fire and the rescue department will be taking the lead on that, and set those standards so that they're bringing people who are appropriate to come in for 24 hours. That's what our permit allows for. They will come for 24 hours. It's a safe environment to get them off the street, especially during winter, to come down off of intoxication. They will be supervised by nurses and EMTs. They'll keep an eye on them. They'll be certified to distribute medications as they need to be, monitor vitals, and then if the situation escalates, they will be. Toward the end of that 24-hour period, they'll be asked if they would like to have help reaching out to detox and substance abuse disorder sources. We're going to be partnering here with Turquoise Lodge. We're asking Haven to also partner with us in that as well. CARES Campus, some other community outsourced patient places as well. We know that there's a good chance that if we say take someone multiple times to be dropped off at the site before they are ready to receive help. So we're going to meet them where they're at, non-judgmental. You know, if Jennifer comes in and this is her 5th time in, and Jennifer's still not ready, that's great. We're going to make sure that you're safe. We're going to connect you to resources. We're going to transport you off property. We're not going to open up the door and let you wander. Transport you off property. And then maybe by the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th time, Jennifer's ready to open to substances.
Excuse me, transport them to where?
It'll either be getting them to the bus stop and on a bus, or they'll be assigned city vehicles where they can transport them either to a shelter location. Or it could be again to hospital appointments.
Or
Or a bus stop, like the bus stop right here.
Tail and Central.
Which means.
That's a problem, that's a problem. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
The bus stop right there, I'm sorry, I have a friend who's an addict on fentanyl. That bus stop right there, that's where they're gonna get their dose, the Steve Rocks them from. But just so you know, like, that's where he gets it, is that bus stop.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, this is not a detox center. This is a sobering center. So we are not detoxing them. So detox is a completely different treatment. We are going to offer them to take them to a detox center. Detox is a much longer time period. This is a sobering unit, so.
But are you dealing, I'm guessing a sobering unit is still dealing with people who have substance use issues, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, but I just want to be clear, this is not, it's a different.
Because that's what MAPS is, like, or CARES Campus, right, that they do, yeah, understood, but I'm just saying it's the same issues, and that bus stop is a major problem,
Yeah,
major problem.
Yeah, they'll be escorted there. But again, it's their choice and responsibility and where we're looking to get.
Well, it also becomes a problem for the neighborhoods, though, like, you have to know that, like. Yeah.
So I would say you can either bring them off the street for 24 hours and try to get them help. Versus leaving them on the street. So.
Okay, this is where, like, in that permitting process, Carol Pierce stood up in front of the zoning hearing examiner and said that no one would be just left here within the neighborhood, that they would be transported to another shelter or to this or to that. That is technically in the neighborhood. That
Well, they're
bus
not gonna be
stop.
dropped off and say, good luck to you, here's your bus pass. They're gonna be escorted and put on the bus
To where?
to wherever they decide they want.
Yeah, oh my God.
And you know, this predates your tenure. And you're trying to do your job and whatnot, but boy, the frustration is just getting higher and higher. And, you know, it's good. You sober them up for 24 hours, that's a good thing. But then you dump them back and they're gonna run into their pusher or their friends who say, hey, that's what I have. And it's really impacts the area. And you know, the good neighbor policy, you know, is just
That's a joke.
a fantasy. At this point, I'm completely upset with it. I it was supposed to be a public safety zone. If it is, well, I mean, it's probably as I understand. I've been an administrator, I understand the complexities, but the anxiety and the frustration and the constant bombardment of homeless populations in this area. I see it growing in Parkland. I see it now zooming in Washington, approaching the Southeast Heights.
Yep.
I mean, it's, and I'm not gonna talk about east of us. It's really, I don't know how you can solve the problem without a program and policy. And-
Without a what?
And a policy, I mean, a homeless policy, where you have goals and objectives, to put them back on the street is not a good idea. You know, is there an alternative? And I don't know why the city and the county, and of course the state can't get together. We got plenty of money, we got some smart people here in the city and state. Why can't we hammer this out? Come up with a policy that works. It just seems to be, gosh, I mean, up against residential fence lines. Not supposed to be on sidewalks, but they are. The right across from the gas station, just east of First Nations. That's the fencing I was referencing. They put a set of fencing in, then they put more fencing in. And so people are laying against the fence. Wherever there's a square foot they can lay, they do. And on sidewalks, behind buildings, it's, you know, we just gotta do better, and we just seem to come up with a program. I mean, what's the end result?
Right, that's,
You
there
know,
is no
Yeah.
solution here, and we're
Yeah.
spending a lot of money. A lot of money, and we're not
Millions,
solving the
millions and
problem.
millions.
So the goal is to find a bridge between sobering and detox. Is that fair? And we don't have the tools to do that. I mean, that you have to ask if they would deign to go get help. And if they don't want to, you can't make them. That's what I mean.
I can't take away their rights. Now, if they get in trouble, they better well, that's another location for them to go. But
If they
I
want,
can't, if they get in trouble and they get taken to jail, but I can't force someone. I can't lock them in the car and force them to go to detox.
well, that is an unfortunate situation, because that's where the system breaks down.
Right, that's where the whole
But
thing stops.
HCS is supposed to bring programs to the street. And that's why I was wondering where ACS was today. I mean, they have clients galore. And again, I have a heart for folks. whatever the reasons were, in that condition. But people are trying to get into the convenience store and the being accosted. You try to get gas and, you're accosted. I mean, there's different types of being accosted. And it just, I mean, ACS was supposed to really be a street focused program that you see everywhere. And I wish Jeffrey was here and say it right in front of him. I see a lot of ACS vehicles around the ID, but I don't see them rendering services. But maybe I'm just missing it.
I think a lot of people are rejecting services, and I think they, at least from the ACS representatives I've talked to, and they can't do anything. If they don't want the help, and they don't want to go with them, then like all they can do is offer them the water bottle, the brochure, and like, this is where you can reach us if you choose to get help. And to me, like, I keep thinking, if I know Grisham tried to pass like the involuntary commitment, I think anyone that's like on the street, that's like publicly doing drugs, like they should be getting help for their substance use issue. We need people though, like, cause even if we had involuntary commitment, I think we don't have the facilities or the providers that can care for them if we scoop them up and take them there. So I think if we're asking for big swaths of money of 40 million, we should be looking at how do we like incentivize providers to come to the state and pay them a good salary to make it desirable for them to come and practice here so that we could have supportive housing wing. And then you have people that are qualified and getting paid to operate that supportive housing wing. Like at least the Kaiser Institute's survey back in 2021, when we were looking at this, showed an 86% shortage of behavioral health care providers in our state. So I don't know that those providers exist, but I feel like it has to start with that. We have to have the people that can give the services before we build more rooms and build more of this and build more of that, like, and just build it and they will come. I don't know that they're gonna come. That's the thing. Like, we have to be able to offer treatment to these people. I sat and watched, I called ACS for my friend who was passed out in the bushes up at Montgomery and Tramway, and I sat there watching until they showed up and they like woke him up from his stupor. I was like, oh, you want help? And he stumbled off. He didn't want help. He wants to go score his next thing. If he's erect, he's not gonna like ask for help. Like, I've seen it. Like, they don't want help. They're being driven by an illness. Like, so ACS, I think, doesn't have any more capacity of solving the problem if it's just. So I think some of the things we're talking about here actually are a legislative issue.
If they're clearly not in their right mind, how do you let them make the choice? How can you let them?
Under the current state law, that's what she was saying, it's
Yeah,
a
it's a
legislative issue right
legislative
now, they
issue.
literally cannot hold them because
That's
the
true.
city is funding settlement, they can't. They're legally not allowed to hold them, so we need to get the legislature to take up the governor's initiatives to change the commitment clause. But our legislatures refuse to hold the special sessions.
Or then as a backup.
Yeah.
Get the drugs off the street. That needs to be, if you can buy a head of fentanyl for 30 cents,
Yeah.
3 for $1, $5 get you stoned the whole damn day.
Yeah.
And if you don't stop that flow, they have no desire.
They'll just find another one. I mean, just think before fentanyl, it was heroin. Heroin is nearly stopped because it's too expensive. Fentanyl is easier to get, easier to make, and it's cost effective.
They still got 7.5 kilos from this bust over here by Wilson when they did that
Yeah, I
a
know.
year ago now,
I know.
last
I know.
fall.
And it's, there's, it's not one problem. It's, dysfunctional families, education, health, housing, employment. I can't believe that we couldn't recover 80% of that population if we put our mind to it. There's always some that will never, that's just how they're wired. But, I mean, we're talking about 50 beds. And I'm
Yeah.
appreciative of it. But does that meet the need? I mean, even begin to meet the need?
That's 50 more in addition to the 85 we already have. You have
50 in women's shelter.
50 in women, and you have how many men?
None right now. So let's go through the rest of the updates. So we have 50 in women's shelter. Sobering will add 50 more. We're gonna phase it in. We're not gonna open day one with 50. We're gonna open with 10. We're gonna work with our provider to see if they're out of state. We can find an in-state provider. So we have an out-of-state provider who is coming in. They're gonna bring nurses from their other locations to help us hire and train up local staff. So we'll open the first couple of weeks with 10 beds at a time. And then we'll gradually progress until we're fully staffed to manage 50 beds at a time, 24 hours a day. So that's another 50. So
And
that's
your stay is
24 hours.
24 hours.
Yep, we're only permitted 24 hours.
So nobody really stays here more than 24 hours until a wing is operational, and then will they stay?
Well, remember, women's shelter is a 90-day program. So women's shelter is 90 days. Sobering will only be 24 hours.
Sobering, which is a new program.
Correct. So just completed construction, got our final sign-offs today. We'll be looking to open operations mid-December. But we'll be running training and open houses and tours. County helped us pay for this. Some of the opioid settlement money helped us pay for this. So we're bringing our partners through to see what they helped to pay for. So we'll be seeing a little bit of activity at the backside as we bring, especially when we bring the first responders. We'll probably see some trucks and cars and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's sobering. Medical respite will open into December.
Oh, that's good.
So medical respite is for anyone who is unhoused that has been in the emergency room or the hospital, who is well enough, the hospital can't keep them any longer, but is not well enough that if they go back on the street and try to finish their recovery, they're gonna get sick again. So we're trying to break that cycle of hospital to street, back to hospital, street. So
And how long can they stay?
they can stay 60 days. They can get an exemption if they need to stay longer. So this is someone that's probably undergone surgery, broken a bone, had an open wound, had an infection, that sort of thing.
Will you be taking veterans?
Absolutely. Yeah, all these programs accept veterans.
And we have the new Vic Center up in Gibson, which is a good thing.
Right.
So we are partnering with UNM First Nations, Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless, and Heading Home. Heading Home will be our operator. They'll be in charge of intake, linen service, food service, transportation to and from follow-up appointments. And do the other things that the medical providers won't provide. First Nations, Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless are our medical providers. They will be here during the day to check on people, make sure they're feeling like they should. If they follow-up appointments, they'll make sure that those get scheduled. We are not paying for Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless or First Nations to be here. They will bill Medicaid directly for their services. So 50 beds, 60 days. If they need an exemption to stay longer, they can stay up to 90 or more. And we just want to make sure they're healthy before we give them case management and try to get them to a housing location. Men's shelter will open beginning of January. It is 42 beds. It will mirror the women's shelter 90-day program. We'll have an operator for that one as well. And then during those 90 days, we're hoping to accept residents who are interested in intense case management. So again, anything around job skills, financial literacy, substance use disorder counseling, treatment, and then case management into long-term safe housing. Yeah, the design right now for the extension of men's extension. So when we open the men's bed, do not have engagement services that are ready to go, but it's more important to get the beds up and running. And we'll do case management, administrative offices, in the lobby, both league offices back here. So part of that extension of men's will include 50 more beds, but it will also include spaces. The men's space is here on the first floor. Down the hall, will continue down the hall. Then women's shelter is upstairs and they will continue down the hall as well. Women's will add 51 to 56 more. That's
So we'll be at about 100, between 142 to 150 beds at that point.
yeah, if you're wrapping sobering and respite into it, you've got about 100 for men and 100 for women, so that's 200 right there, and we've got 100 between respite and sobering.
So $300.
Services do you guys provide for the youth?
We are currently under construction for a young adult shelter, so we are defining young adults 18 to 25. We do not go younger than 18. We have partners in the community who will do that because it's a whole different licensing
Yeah,
process.
no, not like that, like, so you know how we're here at the transformative meeting because we're asking about questions about what's going on in the services, right? Well, our kids in these schools nearby are seeing all of it. They're seeing all of this. And who's explaining to them why this is here? Who's explaining to them about all these services? And how to get out, like, don't you think that maybe that should be a part of this too, is to give some sort of education to the kids? Let them know, because like, we've been doing a lot with the kids and a lot of the stuff they say is just, it's scary. They see a lot and it's upsetting. They don't even want to walk down the street by themselves. It's affecting them, and it's like, at what point do we start taking care of our youth too? Start putting some sort of funds for them when it comes to education. Because all you're gonna get is the next group of kids who see it's the same thing, nobody cares about us. Now you have a new population of homeless that are in drugs. Because I mean, even being at middle school today, I asked kids, what would you guys want to see in this area? One kid's like, more drugs.
Code red. Code red. Are we on fire?
Yeah.
You said it was.
Yeah, since the thoughts are long, I'm not, so I'm gonna ask you to.
Yeah.
Exit it over.
Okay. Need to get out of here. It's about time, on 8:01. It's great to see you here.
Thank you.
What?